Some people might be wondering why I recorded the last few episodes the way I did. Why I opened with a poem, why I told the story of a witch trial, why I started speaking about blood memory, ceremony, and the names that came before mine. The truth is, none of this is separate. You can't talk about Indigenous education without talking about the people who kept our knowledge alive when it was punishable. You can't talk about law and land and credentials without talking about what they burned, what they banned, and now what they pretend to welcome. We didn't just wake up in this system. We were dragged here. And We Rise Again wasn't just a poem. It was a refusal to be erased from remembrance and from the curriculum. The in-between wasn't just a story about witches, it was about the survival of a spiritual jurisdiction, the continuity of our governance even when it's under assault. And now, this. The College of Teachers says that my language isn't valid. That a piece of paper from Colonial institutions has more weight than the language I speak and the lives I teach. The province says it honors our education, but it writes laws like Bill 5 that gut our rights, erase our authority, and sell the land out from underneath our feet. And the premiers? They stand at podiums trading pipelines and rail corridors like they're just ink on paper, not the bones of our ancestors beneath the earth they plan to cut through. So, if you're wondering why I recorded those episodes, it's because this one was always coming. The spiritual, the historical, the political, they're all braided. What they call governance, we've always known as law that breathes. And what they call progress, we know as theft with a press release. This episode isn't just a response. It's a reckoning, because if they can erase our teachers, our languages, our land, they will. But not without a fight. And not without this record. You are listening to the Hidden Coffee House podcast. I'm Saga, teacher, advocate, activist, occasional actor, and academic. The Ontario College of Teachers has now made it abundantly clear. They will not recognize Indigenous language credentials unless they're filtered, flattened, and made legible by a colonial institution that they deem acceptable. I hold a post-secondary diploma in Ganyogeha from Trent University. I hold a Bachelor of Education from Queen's, earned through the Indigenous Teacher Education Program. I'm a permanent Mohawk language and Indigenous Studies teacher in a First Nations-controlled school. My job exists because of the survival of my people, not because of a policy. But none of that is good enough for the college. They have refused to list my language diploma on their public register. They have denied the math proficiency test exemption that the Ministry of Education has already approved for Native language teachers. And they have obstructed my ability to have my First Nations, Métis, and Inuit additional basic qualifications recognized from University of Toronto, OISE, because they will not issue my certificate of qualification and registration. Because to them, language and culture are not connected. And yes, I have still participated in other forms of colonial credentialing, such as the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit additional basic qualifications. But I refuse to back down from anything that denies Indigenous people our full rights, such as teaching our own language to our own people on our own land while having a diploma in that language. The province publicly claims that the Native language teachers are exempt, but the College of Teachers has chosen to ignore that and create their own gatekeeping methods. They're not just delaying this process that's been ongoing for over a month. They're denying Indigenous sovereignty in education under the thin excuse of policy. This is not a paperwork issue, this is jurisdictional erasure. And the public sees it. OCT members are sharing the call to action, educators are emailing, support is coming in from every direction, not because people agree with me personally, but because they recognize what this really is. This is a system gatekeeping itself from accountability. I've already had a direct response from the office of MPP Rick Brees. His staff confirmed that my case has been elevated to senior levels and is under active review. They gave me a 1-week window for follow-up, and unlike most offices, this one actually seems like they're working on it. And that matters because Rick Brees, he has a record of supporting Indigenous language revitalization in our territory. But I want to be very clear about something. Whether I get this resolved or not is not the measure of victory, because this isn't just about me. This is about every Indigenous educator with credentials outside the colonial frame. Every person teaching in their language, on their land, and for their people who still gets labeled as unqualified by a settler institution that has no cultural, linguistic, or legal jurisdiction over us. The Ontario College of Teachers is not neutral. It's an arm of provincial control, and its refusal to recognize Indigenous qualifications is not an oversight. It's a form of institutional erasure. You can't say you support reconciliation while denying language. You cannot celebrate Indigenous Peoples Month and then deny the legitimacy of the people keeping that heritage alive. You can't decorate your offices with feathers and beadwork while telling Native teachers they don't belong. So this is where we draw the line. We've done the work, and we will not be erased. Not in our classrooms, not in their registers, not in their policies. Write any policy you want. We will not be erased. While the Ontario College of Teachers is denying Indigenous credentials under the excuse of standards, the provincial government is dismantling every standard that exists, especially the ones meant to protect land, water, and Indigenous rights. It's all connected. Because at the same time I'm being told my language credentials and experience are invalid, Ontario passed Bill 5, the so-called Protect Ontario by Unleashing Our Economy Act. That's the actual title. It sounds like it was written by a think tank intern hopped up on Red Bull and corporate donations. But here's what it really is. Bill 5 is an omnibus attack on land-based jurisdiction. It gives the government, specifically the cabinet, the power to create special economic zones that are exempt from provincial laws, municipal bylaws, and even Indigenous consultation requirements. It overrides environmental protections. It accelerates mining and development approvals. It strips away oversight mechanisms, and it allows entire regions to be carved out of legal accountability with a stroke of a pen. If that sounds like colonialism, it is. If it sounds like land theft, it is. And if it sounds like something the people were never consulted on, they weren't. The Species Conservation Act created under Bill 5 replaced Ontario's endangered species protection with something more, quote, business-friendly, unquote. Meanwhile, the Ring of Fire, one of the most environmentally sensitive and culturally significant territories in the province, is being fast-tracked for mining and industrial development under that exact language this bill enables. First Nations in the area were clear. This violates consultation obligations. It threatens ecosystems. It bypasses consent. The government's response? Expedite it. Suppress resistance. Push it through. And this is what we're supposed to call economic growth. A colonial free-for-all where land, life, and law are all negotiable so long as the money flows up. But let's be honest, this bill was never about the economy. It was always about control. It's the same logic the Ontario College of Teachers is using, the same logic that defines every arm of colonial infrastructure. If it cannot be measured, translated, or regulated by them, it doesn't count. If it cannot be exploited, sold, or standardized, it gets erased. Indigenous law does not fit into their economic zones. Our credentials don't fit into their registers, and our languages don't fit into their frameworks. And our consent doesn't fit into their timelines, but that's not our problem. It's theirs. Because Bill 5 might be provincial legislation, but the land it targets is older than Ontario. The law it tries to erase is older than the courts. And the people they think they can silence are still here. We're still watching and we're not moving. The same government that says they support Indigenous education is passing laws that make it harder to teach on the land. The same province that claims to honor consultation is steamrolling communities that say no. They want our knowledge in the curriculum, but not in our own hands. They want our language on banners, but not in classrooms. And they want our lands in their portfolios, not in their governance. This is not economic development. This is extraction disguised as progress. It's jurisdiction laundering. The quiet criminalization of sovereignty. And if you're still wondering how it connects to the College of Teachers, ask yourself this. What's more threatening to a colonial system? An Indigenous mind protest or an Indigenous language diploma they can't control? Because the way they've responded to both, it's the same strategy. Deny, discredit, displace. But not this time. While Ontario is busy pushing pipelines through paper agreements and selling growth like it's reconciliation, something different happened out west. Wab Kinew, Premier of Manitoba, was invited to sign on a joint deal with Ontario, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, a memorandum of understanding promising pipelines, rail lines, deep-sea ports, and nation-building infrastructure. That agreement would have tied Manitoba to a cross-provincial corridor through James Bay and the Ring of Fire, the same territory Bill 5 just threw into the hands of industry. And Wab Kinew said no. In a political climate where premiers are climbing over each other to shake hands with extractive corporations, Wab Kinew stood in front of cameras and said no. Not until proper consultation happens. Not until Indigenous communities are fully informed and respected. Not until environmental concerns are actually addressed, not waived. It wasn't just symbolic. It was a rejection of the political logic behind Bill 5. A rejection of fast-track destruction dressed up as regional prosperity. A rejection of backroom colonialism rebranded as partnership. Wab Kinew said Manitoba is open to trade, including pipelines, LNG, potash, and Northern Corridor development, but not if it skips the people it affects the most. Not if it cuts out the very nation it claims to support. Not if it repeats the mistakes of every government that came before. That kind of leadership, it's not just rare, it's necessary. Because when Ontario signed that MOU, it told exactly what it prioritizes. Steel over soil, speed over sovereignty, and signatures over consent. Meanwhile, Wab Kinew reminded the country that Indigenous leadership doesn't have to mean compliance. It can mean refusal. It can mean slowing down. It can mean saying you don't get to use our land to fix your economy while we're still trying to fix our water. And maybe Ontario could use more of that. We've had enough of provincial governments speaking out about us, without us. We have Salmo Makwa, but where are the rest of the voices? Maybe we're past the point of token land acknowledgements in the legislature while bills like Bill 5 are pushed through behind closed doors. Maybe that kind of clarity Wab Kinew showed in Manitoba is exactly what this province needs right now. Salmo Makwa can do it, but can he do it alone? Because Ontario doesn't need just another pipeline study. It doesn't need another task force or roundtable or reconciliation week photo op. It needs Indigenous people in positions of real power. People who aren't afraid to say no and maybe even get kicked out of the legislature. People who don't trade silence for access, and people who know that consultation isn't a checkbox, it's a treaty obligation. And if Ontario's not ready for that kind of leadership, we are. Because we're not waiting for permission anymore. The land doesn't wait, the language doesn't wait. And the next generation of educators, organizers, protectors, they're all watching. If Wab Kinew can say no at the Premier's table, then we can say no right here too. No to Bill 5, no to jurisdiction laundering, No to colonial credentialing bodies pretending to honor education while denying the people who live it. What you're hearing isn't opposition for the sake of resistance. It's governance. And that is what they're afraid of. Let's talk about the Ontario College of Teachers, or as I like to call them, the Ministry of Credential Policing and Indigenous Erasure. Because at this point, they're not certifying teachers. They're certifying colonial supremacy with a signature and a smile. Now, let me get this straight. If I took a few university classes in Quebec, we're good. If I spent a weekend in France with Duolingo Premium, they'd probably fast-track me. But a post-secondary diploma in Gunyongeha from Trent University? Sorry, that doesn't meet our standards. Whose standards? The ones written on treaty land using stolen frameworks by people who can't pronounce the name of the nation they're regulating? The Ontario College of Teachers has one job: protect the public interest. And somehow, they've decided that the public is most at risk from, wait for it, qualified Indigenous language teachers. Not from the rise of far-right extremism across the country and in schools. Not from systemic racism. Not from the fact that half the curriculum still pretends Canada is a multicultural picnic. No. The real danger is us. Native language teachers with a diploma and a backbone and extra education. And their solution? Block my exemption from a math test that doesn't even apply to native language teachers under ministry policy. Refuse to list my diploma on the public register. Obstruct my ability to finish any additional basic qualifications in First Nations, Métis, and Inuit studies, or any other one, because they're withholding my certificate of qualification and registration, even though it's my language and it's on my land. That's not just bureaucracy. That's targeted exclusion. And while all of this is happening, what's OCT doing? Now, posting orange shirts on Instagram, making statements about reconciliation, all kinds of land acknowledgements, holding panel discussions on allyship and education. Allyship? You want allyship. Here's a thought. Stop denying the existence of Indigenous expertise. Stop acting like we're footnotes in our own territories. Stop pretending reconciliation is a hashtag instead of restructuring of power. The college wants Indigenous voices in the classroom, as long as they don't disrupt colonial status quo. They want our stories, but not our sovereignty. They want our aesthetics, but not our authority. Our trauma, but not our qualifications. And let me be clear, this isn't about me needing their approval. I don't need the College of Teachers to validate me. I have a community, I have a nation, I have a responsibility. That's more that can be said about the bureaucrats hiding behind policy, not answering their phones anymore, while Indigenous kids grow up never hearing the language in their classrooms. Because while they're protecting the integrity of the profession, I'm protecting the future of a language that predates this province and this country. While they're worried about their register, I'm worried about the silence that comes when you let the language die. And while they're issuing guidelines, I'm issuing a warning. We are not asking for access anymore. We're taking it. So, to the Ontario College of Teachers, here's your performance review. You failed to uphold Indigenous rights. You've ignored ministry directives. You've eroded public trust, and you've proven that your vision of reconciliation is still just a colonial audit in new font. If this is what protecting public interest looks like, maybe the public needs protection from you. The Ontario College of Teachers is not just denying me. They are denying every Indigenous language educator who walks in with credentials that don't come pre-approved by the colonial framework. And the province? They're passing laws like Bill 5 that ignore consultation, destroy environmental protection, and fast-track extraction, all under the banner of unleashing the economy. But what they're really unleashing is the truth. Because the more they try to erase us, the louder we get. The more policies they write, the more we stand up and say, this isn't yours. It never was. So, here's your call to action. Take 5 minutes, do 5 things. 1. Share the call to action. It's live on my social media at AndrewBrand87 and at the Hidden Coffee House Pod. Send it, repost it, tag OCT, Ministry, OSSTF, the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, ETFO, the Elementary Teacher Federation of Ontario, MPP Rick Brees, MPP Saul Mamakwa, MPP Paul Calandra, MPP Chandra Pasma. Second, write to the Ontario College of Teachers. Demand they recognize Indigenous language diplomas and enforce the MPT exemption for Native language teachers. Third, contact the Ministry of Education. Ask them why they're letting a regulatory body ignore their own policies. And 4, if you're an OCT member, speak out. You're part of the system. Use your voice. And last, number 5, support Indigenous educators in your circle, because we're not just fighting for a credential, we're fighting for survival. So we're no longer waiting for reconciliation. We are reclaiming jurisdiction. To the educators listening, you are not alone. To the students, you're the reason why we are doing this. And to the institutions dragging your feet, we see you. We hear your silence, and it's being documented. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Write any policy you want. We will not be erased. Until next time, keep your words sharp, your roots deep, and your eyes on the ones who pretend not to see us, because they know exactly what we are, and that's what they're afraid of.